our management committee together say, okay, let's look into this area and see whether in times to come, either organically or with some push, we become a global hub supplementing London, or in that case, Zurich, that we become a global hub in Asia for the industry.
Welcome to Smarter Markets, a weekly podcast featuring the icons and entrepreneurs of technology, commodities, and finance, ranting on the inadequacies of our systems and riffing on ideas for how to solve them. Together, we examine the questions: are we facing a crisis of information or a crisis of trust? And will building smarter markets be the antidote? This episode is brought to you in part by Abax Exchange, bringing better price discovery and risk management tools to navigate today's commodities markets through centrally cleared, physically deliverable futures contracts in energy, environmental, battery materials, and precious metals markets. Smarter markets are here.
Welcome back to Summer Playlist 2025 on Smarter Markets. I'm Dave Greeley, Chief Economist at Abax Technologies. Our guest today is Albert Cheng, CEO of the Singapore Bullion Market Association. We'll be discussing the SBMA's vision for Singapore to become a leading global center for the trading of gold and other precious metals, and the SBMA's roadmap to making that vision a reality. Hello, Albert. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. I think we share a common vision for Singapore to become a leading global center for the trading of gold and other precious metals. And at the SBMA's recent Asia Pacific Precious Metals Conference, you spoke of the SBMA's roadmap to achieving that vision. And I'm honored that you can join us here today to discuss that roadmap with us. Before we talk about the roadmap to the future, though, I'd like to talk about how we got to the present moment. You and the SBMA have worked for many years to lay the foundations and build the ecosystem of market participants needed for Singapore to become a gold and precious metal trading hub. You call these efforts Project Lion 1. And I was hoping you could kind of take us through what was the vision for Project Lion 1 and what were some of the key achievements?
Certainly, I think it was a long journey. We set up in 1993, which is now almost 32, 33 years already. But the initial setup of the SBMA was more coincident. It was triggered by the Singapore government is introducing goods and services tax, GST, to everything in Singapore, including gold. And the precious metal industry was quite concerned that if we put tax on precious metal, which is equivalent to money, it will kill the market. So we gather together and talk to the government, say, are you able to exempt precious metal in 1993, say that, so that we can save the industry? Well, of course, the government will say, we do not give exemption to rice, to milk, to medicine. Why we have to give it to precious metal? So it was not successful. However, the group of people gathered at that time continued to form a loosely binded social circle of the bullion trader. That was the beginning of the SBMA. To cut the long story short, and then the market went on, and it had some ups and downs, and the market and the financial market also grow in size and in sophistication. So people seem to forget about gold until in the year 2010, after a super run of the precious metal market, particularly gold, the Singapore government come back to the industry saying that, have we missed something? I mean, we used to be a physical hub for precious metal for the Southeast Asian country, because Singapore, when we set up, it was built up as an open economy. So precious metal coming into Singapore and going out of Singapore do not attract tax. So we have a a status of being a entreport or the transshipment hub for precious metal into the surrounding country when all these countries have their own restrictions. So the Singapore government in 2010 come to the industry, say, we saw there was a big commodity run. We have not been enjoying it. Is there anything we can do? That was the beginning of Project Line 1. The government come to the industry, say, is there any way that we can revive Singapore as a physical hub? The industry at that time told the government that it might not be possible. First, Singapore is a small country, small population, no consumer base, not a gold mining country. There is no natural flow of physical metal coming through Singapore. So we have to revive Singapore as a hub. The only thing that we are different, our advantage is we are an open economy. Things come in and go out easily. So we then told the government that maybe we should do a study and see what condition we need to create in order to get to this status. And the Project Line 1 come back with a few suggestions. One of them is, first of all, please remove the GST on gold. Secondly, we have to create flow of gold into Singapore. A good example is follow Switzerland. Switzerland has a lot of refinery, so gold flow into Switzerland and then go to the market in London. So whether we can follow this same model as Switzerland, that we invite refinery to come to Singapore so that the scrap gold, the doré gold can come through Singapore and refine into kilobar and supply to the market. So that's the second thing. The third thing is we probably have a lot of trader in Singapore because Singapore has many international banks being based here, and some of them have bullion desks, and quite a number of the international bullion bank is here. But we do not have enough traders, second tier and third tier traders. Maybe we have to attract our neighboring country because of our open economy and the free movement of currency and financial market activity. Probably some of the traders can open up their international trading office in Singapore. So those are the things that we have given to the government in the Project Line 1. And the good government went back and then think about it. And then they come back with some action. The first action was in 2012, they removed the GST. And they also go around the world visiting refinery, all the big names they have visited. And they finally convinced Metalor to open up a refinery in Singapore. And they also go around the region trying to convince gold trader in the region, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. I mean, everywhere they go, they come back and say, well, set up your trading office in Singapore and we'll give you some incentive. So that three things is very crucial, very important. And the one final thing is the government say, this is our project. We can push the project forward. In the initial year, we can work on it, but we need somebody to continue to champion the cause, to continue to be the receiving point when a foreigner or foreign entity want to come to Singapore. Somebody need to explain to them what it's all about and introduce them to likely partners and introduce them to the right party in the region. And we need somebody to continue to do that. And they come to SBMA and say, hey, why can't you guide to not just like a social networking group? Can you professionalize and become a truly trade association? Following the model of the London Bullion Market Association, try to, let's say, build office staff and build full-time staff to continue the process of connecting people in the region. So with all these things, part of the project line, Singapore, since 2012, begin the journey of becoming regional gold trading hub. That was a long description of Project Line 1.
I'm so glad you described it though, because it's such an impressive story when you say that kind of the one asset that Singapore had was its openness. And starting with that, you get the tax treatment correct, you get an openness to bring in people and educate those who'll be the industry participants, and you can really grow. It wasn't like there was a tremendous natural advantage other than the openness, which is, I think, really impressive. And I wanted to ask you, if you think back to that first gathering in 1993 to what you see in the SBMA today, how much has the bullion market grown in Singapore over those 3 decades or so?
It changes in form and also changes in sophistication. Initially in 1993, it was purely like any other commodity or cargo or anything that come in Singapore. Singapore being an entry port where goods come to Singapore, go into the warehouses, and the warehouse people buy it and then taken from the warehouse and shipped to the user. So Singapore play a role initially as just a left hand give it to the right hand kind of business. But I think if you come to today's world, Singapore has a full ecosystem whereby the commodity itself in the form of doré will come to the refinery, and the refinery will upscale it to fine gold and produce kilobar or even 400 ounce bar with it that need to be to deliver to London. And the bar will go to jewelry manufacturer for making jewelry. And the bar can also go to high net worth or investors to store or at home or at some of the sophisticated storage. And in Singapore, we do have 2 state-of-the-art precious metal storage in Singapore. And the banks also carry out financial market activity and providing lending activity to either in the upper end of the ecosystem to the mining industry through their customer, through their offices and branches. And they will also financing the jewelry manufacturing as well as the jewelry retailer. And we also see that in terms of retailing of the gold product, it's not just purely physical gold coin or gold bar. We see more sophisticated financial instrument. Banks have gold saving account, they have certificate, and we have ETF. The most popular Spider Gold ETF is cost listed in Singapore. In Asia, they cost listed in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan. And among the 3 cost listing center, Singapore actually has the highest volume. The reason for that is our regional neighbor, such as Thailand, they also have local currency gold ETF, but their underlying is gold ETF, Spider Gold ETF, and they buy it from Singapore. This sophistication in the last 30 years, we have witnessed that, and I myself, being in the industry, I can count and now go back to 1985, I joined the industry. And until now, I have actually witnessed all the happening in the last 40 years.
And so, after all that's happened in those past 40 years, now it's brought you to this moment, and now you're embarking on Project Lion 2, which you've characterized as a strategic leap forward. What is your vision and what are your aspirations for this next step for Project Lion 2?
I would say it's our vision. I mean, is SBMA, the Singapore Bullion Market Association vision. To give you a little bit of statistic, I mean, when we started in 10, 12 years ago, we have just 30-something members. These are all corporate members, including banks, refineries, traders, logistic provider, all the people in the so-called upper part of the ecosystem is our members. And it's initially a majority of them are Singapore-based. And we started as an ASEAN-based trade association. But over the year, our membership grew. Now we are 79. And that composed of not Singapore. We have about 60% of our member is Singapore based. 40% of them is outside of Singapore. I mean, some of them are ASEAN based, and we have members from America, we have members from Europe and Eastern Europe and all that. So we have attracted quite a lot of following. And the reason why they join the SBMA is because we provide a platform for them to connect, to look for business opportunity in ASEAN. And I believe that the ASEAN market is one of the last frontier market of the precious metal market in the world. Of course, I mean, there are other frontier markets like Africa and South America, but some of them now cannot be accessed in terms of the downstream downstream market. But the ASEAN market, with our population size, this is the third largest in market group in the world. And it has a natural affinity to gold, which is a plus. Plus, in the past few years, particularly in the last 10, 15 years, because of the increasing wealth from the middle class in these newly developed kind of sovereign state, we see an increasing interest in gold. So with all that, Project Line 2 this is the backdrop of Project Line. I took too long to talk about Project Line 2. Project Line 2 was started about 5 years ago. Our management committee member come together and say, we now have, that was 2018, slightly before the COVID. The industry, but the management committee of SBMA come together and say, we have started a journey to become the regional hub. And more or less, we have achieved certain status. We have the flow, we have the business. But what really is Singapore need to move forward. And because Singapore is very small, so everything we do cannot be too small because we are aiming at bigger pieces of pie around the world using the advantage of Singapore being an open economy. So if we want to grow from a regional hub, what is the next area of growth that we need to look into? So we say, let's compare with London. So we look at what we have and what London has, and we compare. And most of the function London has, we have, except two things. One is we don't have an inventory of gold like London. The sovereign state and institutional investor store their gold in London. The Bank of England have more than 8,000 tons of gold, and plus other custodian service in London, there are close to 10,000 tons of gold in London. We don't have that. And secondly, we don't have a clearing system for gold, like the local London price. So if we can achieve these two things, or build out these two things into Singapore, we could actually become another supplementary global hub in Asia. Because we look at the last 20 years that physical gold consumed or being bought in Asia, in India and in China, plus Southeast Asia together, it accounts for at least 60 to 70% at some time of the total new gold production every year. But with the legacy and the settlement system, everything needs to be settled in London, which is fine. I mean, all traders are used to it, and they have a formula to calculate the differences. But what if there is an Asia time zone hub in Singapore in Asia hour for all the players in Asia to clear the gold in the same day? And if they have excess gold, they do not need to send it back to London. They can send to Singapore. And if the two markets is talk to each other, it can be swapped, it's fungible, and it's safe, and it reduces the carbon print. These are kind of ideal. So our management committee together say, okay, let's look into this area and see whether in times to come, either organically or with some push we become a global hub supplementing London, or in that case, Zurich, that we become a global hub in Asia for the industry. So that was the gist of the project line 2.
And thinking about where a push might come from, what do you believe the Singapore government and the Monetary Authority of Singapore can or should contribute to helping make Singapore a leading trading hub for gold?
I look at other industry in Singapore. Singapore is a small place, but it is a aviation hub for the region. Singapore is a shipping hub for the region. And even I hear people like, we have car manufacturers sending their car to Singapore, and I saw them sitting in our on the terminal tarmac and waiting to ship to consumption market in Southeast Asia. That's shipping hub. So similarly, gold actually can be in that position. And I give you another good example. Who will think of Singapore, a hot place, a small country, can host Formula One car racing at night? I mean, over 15, 20 years ago, some of the crazy people or long-sighted people say, why do we actually bring Formula One to Singapore, and we can bring tourist store, and we can also boost up the economy? And that happened. So I think Singapore is not afraid of thinking big, but we need to have very good rationale why it needs to happen and what it will benefit both to Singapore and for the community. We do believe that in the precious metal community, with all the physical being consumed in Asia, 67, 80%, depending on how many countries you included into it, it needs to be actually more efficient and also need to be traded and make it more accessible to all the user. And having this thought, I think is not crazy enough, but I think if everybody come together and bring and have the same wish and same direction, it probably may happen. It depends on how many years it will happen.
I was hoping we could get into some more of the specifics. So, as you look to turn Singapore from the regional hub it's grown into to a global hub on par with London and Zurich, kind of connecting the Asian region to the entire world and the entire world to the Asian region, what's the SBMA's roadmap for achieving this vision? And what are the key pillars of your approach?
Well, project line 2, as it being laid out, is to build out on our infrastructure in terms of getting a liquidity pool of, if possible, sovereign wealth and sovereign countries' physical gold storage, which then will give the gold capital market basis to operate and to divide from there and to increase the capital market activity in gold. That was the nutshell of it. So in order to get there, we analyze why central bank could go in London. I think the first reason is because we have been putting there for the last 30, 40 years. There's no reason why I put it somewhere else. So that is the first reason. I think the second reason was liquidity breed liquidity. If I put gold in London and I want to access the capital market, it's so easy. There are so many players there. And the third of it is to get this kind of comfort that Bank of England, another central bank, is taking care of my gold. So I think these are very good reason. So, but on the other hand, we also have a good set of reason for storing it in Singapore or in Asia. Is if there is a place closer to my home to store my gold, no. If I want to bring my gold into the capital market, if I don't want to ship it to London, is there any other place in the world? No. And if I need to store my gold not in a large bar form, if I have it in kilobar, is there any place in the world that can store my kilobar? The answer is no. So then I will ask another question is, who would you trust to put the gold that it's so precious to your country, and you have a peace of mind. And you look around Asia, which gold center is something that you can consider. Or so we search and say, we put up the advantage of putting gold in Singapore. And it tick the boxes that I just asked the question. And with the rule of law in Singapore and the open economy and the legal system is transparent and all this. And if one thing is the Singapore government is part of this game. They either overseeing or they run the custodian, the overseeing, or they endorse some kind of backing behind this initiative. So first thing first, we are in dialogue with the government to say that whether you can play a role in this custodian service so that you provide the trust and the peace of mind to people who want to store gold in Singapore. So this is first thing. Secondly, as I just said, you need a vibrant capital market so that the gold store here can be used in the financial market easily. We do have all the international bullion bank here. You name it, we have it. The JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, the Toronto Dominion, and the UBS and the Citibank. They all here. They all have bullion desks. So we have big bullion bank here, and they can always have this activity if there is a customer. And we also have downstream customer who would like to use this service. And the financial market here is also very vibrant. I mean, if we need to have gold derivative and we need to have gold ETF or any other gold-based digitized gold product, we could have it here. And the MAS has have a transparent policy for people who want to sandbox their product idea in Singapore. So we take all these boxes. So I think that is something we like to see it happening in the next few years. And the vision of that we put forward, well, we have a slogan called Forward SBMA 2030. We use 2030, 5-6 years later, as an intermediate target line that by then we hope we can achieve something. We like to have a custodian service. We like to start building a capital market for gold activities. And with that, we need a clearing service. We need to create a local Singapore market. And we are in discussion with a couple of banks who are interested to do this together with the regulator. And the more important thing is we also need to engage the international community and see whether they like the idea and whether they will use it. I have separate conversation with the London market, and they are not against it because, I mean, I always believe 1 + 1 may be equal to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So having another global hub supplementing London may actually increase business for all the players which are part of it. So 2030 is our intermediate target, and we like to do something similar to London, but of course, we will follow all the London's protocol. We'll use their good delivery list, of course, subject to discussion, and we'll use the same protocol. We'll follow the Local Council and the SBMA responsible gold sourcing. And one more thing which might be actually an advantage is because we are starting this from scratch, and we might bring in a lot of modern way of accounting and stock taking of the bar, and each bar have to be digitized, and each bar has to have his responsible sourcing, proof of responsible sourcing. I think these are all advantage for somebody who want to build it up from scratch, and you can put in all the wish lists into this project.
It's nice when you get to start with a clean slate. You don't have all the legacy issues. And I wanted to dig into those two pieces. As you said, there's this desire to integrate physical and digital gold markets. What do you see as the opportunity there, and what do you see as the challenges?
I think, of course, there is huge opportunity as the world is digitized in all aspects. And I think gold market is one of the least developed market in terms of digitization. I think the reason for that is our transaction need to have physical gold. And the physical gold, not every single piece of it is digitized. I mean, most of them, because of its transient usage, except the 400-ounce bar, which is stored in London deep cold storage, the kilo bar is just in time use. When a jewelry manufacturer receives a kilo bar, they melt it down into the jewelry. An investor may keep it for a longer time, but once it go out of the chain of custody, it has to be melted down when they return to the system. So these are some inherent barrier of gold. So it also create a barrier for digitization. So I think the financial market is all moving in that direction, and the gold market cannot resist. So we need to follow that trend. At the moment, we are not equipped ourselves enough to follow the trend. I think it might have to start with digitization in all your goals in storage. At the moment, I mean, we all understand that in London, the Bank of England gold, they are all stored there for many years. And so they are all handwritten, I exaggerate, they are all handwritten recording of all the details. And it is not digitized. And it has issue if you have to digitize every single piece of gold in London. But if we are able to start from a clean slate, like what you said, it can be piece by piece, beginning the journey of digitization of gold, and it can start from here.
You had also mentioned the need to promote responsible sourcing and ESG best practices. Why do you believe this is so important, and how do you plan on promoting these practices?
Well, responsible sourcing is something the industry is pushing, and I think it's important because downstream or in the whole ecosystem, responsible sourcing and ethical gold, and also the transparency in getting the material from the earth to the consumer hand need to be reported at every stages. And we need to have a record from the metal which coming out from the ground, changing hand in the interim and event to the investor. Because they ask for it. If you are not doing that, you will be out of business.
Recently, the SBMA hosted its annual Asia Pacific Precious Metals Conference. And I was hoping you might be able to look back and tell us what were some of your key takeaways from that conference. And do you believe that the vision and roadmap that you've shared with us today resonated with the members of the bullion market in attendance?
This is our 8th edition of the APPMC. It was started in 2018 when we have about 300 delegates. And this year we welcome over 600. So it's a double. And the quality of the turnout of the delegates are all senior people in the business and coming out from more than 30 countries in the world. And we are over 200 something company joining us. And one good thing about the conference, which we created as a platform for the industry to come together on an annual basis, we would like to see whether there are opportunity for them in ASEAN. And year and after year, we have not failed that because every year we bring new element into the conference or bringing people that ordinarily you will not see in other conference, in our conference. For example, this year is marked the first year that Indonesian government start opening up their gold market. What does it mean? They have been a big gold producing country in the past. They have big gold mine in Indonesia. And unfortunately, in the past many years, all the gold output was shipped out of the country to refine outside and downstream value added not in Indonesia. And Indonesia itself has a big population and they also need gold to make into gold jewelry. So they import gold jewelry. They import raw material gold and they export gold which supposed to be can be used locally to outside world. And then the Indonesian government say that it doesn't make the logic. So they started to come to us 2 years ago and say, we like to keep the industry in our country for a while, value added it before it actually goes out into the international market. Can you help us? And we start talking to them. And this year, we're able to bring the minister who are coordinating this business to tell the world that we welcome people to come to Indonesia, and that is what we are planning to do. And they have announced setting up two local bank, and ask them to do bullion business. So this information you will never have heard in any other place, and the APPMC is just doing that and helping the industry to understand the market. So we provide a platform for our neighboring country, and this year we brought in the Indonesian people to conference to tell the world what they have in their mind in opening up the gold market in Indonesia to anybody who are interested to develop the market. And I think that is the purpose of the platform, connecting people with an event on an annual basis. And we have been very successful on that. And we pride ourselves that we are able to create this opportunity for the industry.
Well, thank you, Albert, for sharing your and the SBMA's vision and efforts and roadmap with us. And I wanted to ask you, looking back over these past 40 years and all the efforts that have led to this moment, why do you believe that now is the right moment for Singapore to emerge as a leading global center for the trading of gold and other precious metals?
I think it very much also related to the external environment. I think with price of gold at all-time high, and people are forecasting that we have not reached the peak, and it might continue to get higher and higher. The reason behind was the geopolitical uncertainty, which we are all uncomfortable. And this uncomfortable feeling also actually, we can see it from the central bank behavior. Central bank in the past 10 years, and particularly in the last few years, has heightened their purchase in gold. And central bank normally make long-term decisions. And if they have this move, that signals that the central bank are uneasy about putting all the egg in one basket, and they are diversified. And this gives a very strong signal because they are very reputable entity. If the central bank is doing that, why I am not doing it? So that is the question a lot of people ask themselves. And that's why there are a lot of following. I give you an example. With this gold price up to this level, ordinarily in the past few years in Thailand and in Indonesia, in Vietnam, where it is an agricultural economy and people use gold as a way of store of wealth, and when they need the money, they sell their gold. And very often when price of gold is going up like this, people will say, oh, let's take some profit and get some money and enjoy ourselves. Surprisingly, we don't see any scrap gold coming in the past few months, even though the price gold was so high. And the other thing is, in the last 10 months, we have seen a lot of membership application. I think the external economic environment, the financial market jittery and the uncertainty make it that it is actually the good time to look into a infrastructural improvement in Singapore in order that we can capture this opportunity. And also to give the industry a tools that it might actually help them to build out more business opportunity in ASEAN country. And I mentioned Indonesia this year, and equally, and at the same time, Vietnam government also has abolished the monopoly of gold tail bar making in the country, which is a big deal because they used to monopolize it with one company and in order to control the market. And the government has come out and say, we like to abolish this and we like to gradually opening up the Vietnam market, which by itself is an important gold market in ASEAN. So I think why now is if we are able to do something in terms of enhancing the infrastructure in Singapore for the gold industry, it will help the industry to leapfrog into the next stage. Asia particularly in Southeast Asia, as I said, is the last frontier market, is waiting for people to come and to explore this opportunity. And a lot of people is thinking of, if I'm not there, I will miss out the opportunity. And hence you see a good turnout of the APPMC this year. We also have a lot of people asking for membership because they want to be connected and they don't want to miss the business opportunity.
Couldn't agree. Singapore is the place to be right now in the bullion market. Thank you so much. It's a real honor to have you here, spending some of your time with us, Albert. Before we let you go, there's something a little bit different we do on the podcast for our summer playlist series. It's become a bit of a tradition to ask each of our guests what's on their personal beach reading list this summer. Hopefully you get a little time away. The conference is over. I hope they give you some time to relax. What are you planning on reading this summer?
Reading a book is now a challenge for me. As I get age, I think difficult to read printed material. I actually listen to a lot of YouTube podcasts and get my information from there, which is easier to enjoy and also not taking too much of my stress on my eyesight. And if there's one book which I need to be read, I think with all these things happening in the Middle East and elsewhere, religious thing is still something that is very mysterious to me. I have recently picked up a book called A Short History of Religions, which is a fundamental introduction to many of the religions that we all know, but we don't know exactly what's behind. I do not follow any faith, so it might be a good introduction for me. And I might spend some time reading the books, but certainly not on the beach, and will definitely be in an air-conditioned room. If my balcony is breezy enough, I will sit outside my balcony instead of on the beach.
Thanks again to Albert Cheng, CEO of the Singapore Bullion Market Association. We hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll be back next week with another episode of Summer Playlist 2025. We hope you'll join us.
This episode is brought to you in part by Abax Exchange, bringing better price discovery and risk management tools to navigate today's commodities markets through centrally cleared, physically deliverable futures contracts in energy, environmental, battery materials, and precious metals markets. Smarter Markets are here. Contact sales at abax.exchange to get started. That concludes this week's episode of Smarter Markets by Abax. For episode transcripts and additional episode information, including research, editorial, and video content, please visit smartermarkets.media. Please help more people discover the podcast by leaving a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. Smarter Markets is presented for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information presented on Smarter Markets should not be construed as investment advice. Always consult a licensed investment professional before making investment decisions. The views and opinions expressed on Smarter Markets are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the show's hosts or producer. Smarter Markets, its hosts, guests, employees, and producer, Abax Technologies, shall not be held liable for losses resulting from investment decisions based on informational viewpoints presented on Smarter Markets. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week.